In this explainer, we're going to deconstruct strength training down to its fundamental scientific principles. We're setting aside the trends to really analyze the biomechanical architecture that underpins all effective, long-term athletic development.
And this is the central thesis for our analysis today. Before we even think about adding load or speed or complexity, we first have to achieve near-perfect technical execution. You see, sustainable performance isn't just built on effort. It's built on a solid foundation of precise, repeatable, high-quality movement.
So, to structure our examination, we're going to follow a really clear clinical protocol. We'll start with the universal laws of movement, then apply them directly to the squat and the push-up, and we'll wrap up with a logical programming framework.
All right, let's establish the theoretical bedrock. These are what we call the non-negotiables. They apply to pretty much every loaded movement and form the basis for both safety and for optimal force expression.
First up, and this is absolutely paramount, is spinal neutrality. I want you to think of your spine as a conduit for force. When we maintain its natural curves, we make sure that forces are distributed evenly across the vertebrae. This minimizes harmful shear stress on the discs and allows all that power generated from your hips and legs to be transferred efficiently.
You know, every single repetition you perform has 3 distinct phases. The eccentric, which is the lowering or lengthening phase, the isometric, which is a static pause, and the concentric, the lifting or shortening phase. It's interesting, most injuries and technical breakdowns actually happen during an uncontrolled eccentric phase. So mastery of tempo really is mastery of the movement.
And the final core principle is stability, which we achieve through intra-abdominal pressure. It's actually pretty simple. By taking a deep breath and then bracing your abdominal wall, almost like you're preparing for an impact, we create this internal pressure. It literally acts like a natural weight belt, creating a rigid cylinder around the lumbar spine. That's what provides the stability we need for safe and powerful movement.
Okay, so let's apply these principles to our first case study, the bodyweight squat. This is truly one of the most fundamental human movement patterns there is.
Now, the squat is a knee-dominant pattern, and it primarily targets the glutes and the quadriceps, but its purpose goes way beyond just building strength. It is a critical tool for developing what we call neuromuscular control, basically teaching the central nervous system how to coordinate multiple joints and muscles to produce a single, complex, powerful movement.
Let's break it down, phase by phase. During that eccentric descent, you're going to inhale to help set that intra-abdominal pressure we talked about, controlling your speed the whole way down. Then, a brief isometric pause at the bottom. This eliminates momentum and ensures stability. Finally, the concentric ascent is driven by a forceful exhalation, coordinating both hip and knee extension to get back to the start.
Perfect execution is all about specific cues. You want to initiate the movement with hip flexion. That means sending the hips back first, to properly load the powerful posterior chain. And throughout the entire movement, make sure your knees are tracking over your feet and you're driving force through your whole foot, not just your heels or your toes. Now here are the critical errors you need to be monitoring. Butt wink is a loss of that spinal neutrality right at the bottom of the squat, and it places dangerous shear forces on the lumbar spine. Then there's knee valgus, where the knees collapse inward. That's often a sign of glute weakness, and it puts your ligaments at serious risk. These aren't just minor form issues, they are significant biomechanical failures.
So, why does all this matter? Well, the squat is our main tool for developing force in the sagittal plane. That's the plane of motion for things like sprinting and jumping. Without the neuromuscular control to execute it perfectly, an athlete simply cannot express their power potential efficiently or safely.
And to make sure we maintain that quality, we can scale the movement. A regression, like a box squat, is great because it gives tactile feedback and limits the depth, which helps you learn the pattern correctly. And for a progression, something like adding tempo increases the time under tension. This challenges and improves your motor control without adding any external weight. All right, for our second case study, let's take these exact same core principles, neutrality, tempo, and stability, and apply them to a foundational upper body movement, the push-up.
The push-up is a horizontal pushing pattern. Yes, it engages the pecs and the triceps, but its true value is in its demand for scapular stability and core anti-extension strength. It teaches the body to maintain a rigid, stable torso while the limbs are moving.
So if we analyze the phases, the descent involves controlled elbow flexion as the scapula or your shoulder blades retract together.
After that brief isometric hold, the ascent is a powerful push where the scapula protract, meaning they move apart and wrap around the rib cage. That full range of scapular motion is absolutely critical. For precise execution, your body has to form a straight, rigid plank from your head to your heels. This is a core function we call anti-extension. And this is critical. Avoid flaring your elbows out to 90 degrees. A 45 to 60 degree angle is what protects the shoulder joint. Then at the very top, actively push the ground away to fully engage that serratus anterior muscle.
The most common failure you'll see is lumbar hyperextension, or sagging hips, which tells you the core is weak. Another big one is scapular winging. That's where the shoulder blade lifts off the back. This is a telltale sign of a weak serratus anterior, which is a key stabilizer for shoulder health. These kinds of compensations have to be corrected immediately.
Now, what's really fascinating here from a scientific standpoint is that because your hands are fixed on the ground, the push-up is what we call a closed chain exercise. This environment is actually superior for training scapular stabilizers like the serratus anterior. And a healthy, strong serratus is absolutely paramount for preventing shoulder impingement and for transferring force in any kind of throwing or pressing motion. And this is a perfect illustration of how we manage load. To regress the movement, we can do the push-up on an incline or from the knees. This reduces the percentage of body weight we have to stabilize and press. And to progress it, we can add tempo to increase time under tension, or even use a small deficit to increase the range of motion.
So this intense focus on technical precision has to be integrated into a structured program. Here's a very logical framework, especially for a beginner. The protocol is intentionally simple but highly effective. 2 to 3 sessions a week gives you adequate stimulus and recovery. And notice the volume. It's kept low, with the non-negotiable rule that every single repetition must be technically perfect. The sole focus for the first 4 to 6 weeks is not to increase weight, but to achieve absolute mastery of the movement pattern itself. So we'll leave you with this question. We've clearly established that technical proficiency is the foundation of sustainable strength development. But where else in performance does this principle apply? Think about running mechanics or skill acquisition in a sport, maybe even in cognitive tasks. The underlying principle is always the same. Quality is the prerequisite for quantity.